The great hall of the Celestari Empire was filled with light, sound, and quiet tension. Tall crystal pillars rose toward the curved ceiling, glowing with soft blue energy. Thousands of alien nobles sat in perfect order, their different shapes and colors showing the many species under the Empire's rule. This was a place where power lived and was displayed openly. At the center of the hall stood the throne of the Empire. Empress Kelthira sat upon it, calm and confident. Her silver eyes moved slowly across the crowd. She was young compared to past rulers, but no one questioned her strength. She had united rival factions, expanded borders, and kept peace in a galaxy that often preferred chaos. Yet there was something unusual beside her throne. A human. Elias Ward stood quietly, his hands resting on a simple cane. His hair was gray, his face lined with age, and his posture slightly bent. Compared to the towering armored guards and elegant alien nobles, he looked fragile. Many in the hall barely noticed him. Those who did often wondered why he was even there. Kelthira noticed everything. She could feel the stares, the whispers, the judgment. The human was her father, not by blood but by bond. Decades ago, when Kelthira was still a child, her world had been torn apart by war. Her species had been close to extinction. During that chaos, a small human delegation had arrived, not as conquerors but as helpers. Elias Ward had been one of them. He had found her injured, frightened, and alone. Instead of leaving her to fate, he stayed. He taught her patience, curiosity, and restraint. When her people rebuilt their empire, Kelthira brought him with her despite protests from the council. To her, his presence was not weakness, it was memory. To the empire, it was strange. The ceremony continued as planned. A group of high-ranking delegates stepped forward, each giving speeches about loyalty, strength, and progress. The words were polished, practiced, and empty. Kelthira listened politely, her expression unreadable. Then came the delegation from the Vierks Combine. Their leader, a tall insect-like being with sharp mandibles, spoke smoothly at first. He praised the Empire's technology and military reach. But then his tone shifted. "Our alliance remains strong," he said, "though some among us still find it surprising that a ruler of such power chooses to keep a human so close. It is admirable in a way to honor the past, but sentiment can be dangerous when confused with strength." Merely an observation. Elias waited until the last formalities were done before turning slightly toward Kelthira. "You handled that well," he said quietly. She glanced at him, her expression softening just a little. "They test me through you. Sometimes we hide it." A high-ranking technician rushed forward, his face pale. "Empress, we are experiencing a full systems failure. Power grids, defense networks, navigation arrays, everything is unstable." Kelthira's mind raced. Cause. She had trained her entire life for crisis, but this was different. This was failure at the core. Elias watched quietly. He saw the fear in faces that had never expected to feel helpless. He saw how quickly confidence vanished when machines stopped answering. He took a slow step forward. "Where is the main control access?" he asked. Several aliens turned to look at him, surprised. Kelthira hesitated. "Father, this is not." How he would say, "If you don't understand the basics, the advanced stuff will fail you." She took a breath. "Take him to the control center." Alien engineers worked desperately, issuing commands that went unanswered. Elias stepped inside and frowned. "This is very clean," he said. One engineer looked offended. "Of course it is. Humans learned long ago that something always does. I'm someone who was taught to fix things when there's no one left to ask." The galaxy had made a mistake. They thought humanity had faded into irrelevance, but humans had not disappeared. They had simply been waiting, and this was only the beginning. The control center stayed quiet in a way that felt heavy. Machines still hummed, lights still blinked, but the panic had slowed. Engineers stood frozen, watching the old human move from panel to panel with slow but sure steps. Elias Ward worked without rushing. His breathing was calm, his hands steady. Kelthira remained near the center platform, her eyes never leaving him. She had commanded fleets and judged worlds, yet at this moment she felt like a student again, watching a lesson she did not fully understand. A senior engineer finally broke the silence. "That stabilization should not be possible without AI synchronization," he said, confused. "You bypass the logic cores. Your machines argue because they are trying to be perfect. When perfection breaks, they don't know how to fail safely." "How did you know where to begin?" A new failure was spreading through the orbital network. Defense platforms around the planet were shutting down one by one. A military officer rushed forward. Empress, if the shields fall completely, this world will be exposed. Even a small attack could. Elias turned toward the orbital map. These platforms share the same core behavior pattern. One finally answered, there is an old backup array. It was kept for historical reasons. It does not update. It does not adapt. No holograms, no predictions, just raw data and simple controls. Elias studied it closely, then began issuing commands by hand. He did not type quickly, he typed carefully. One orbital platform stabilized, then another. Across the control center, quiet gasps spread. Kelthira felt something shift inside her. This was no accident. This was not luck. This was preparation. Minutes passed. The immediate collapse was stopped. The Empire was wounded but alive. Still, the cause of the failure remained unknown. A security officer approached Kelthira. Empress, we have traced the origin of the disruption. It was not internal. Someone planned this. An enemy who studied them, who knew their habits, and who assumed humans were irrelevant. In another chamber of the capital, far from the control center, a group of alien officials sat in uneasy silence. These were members of the High Council who had opposed Kelthira's reforms from the beginning. They had hoped the crisis would weaken her authority. It had not gone as planned. One of them spoke quietly. The human is interfering. I hoped I wouldn't have to. Back when humans still built things they didn't fully trust. Another alert sounded. This one was different. Communications were returning. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Confusion, fear, questions. Kelthira straightened. Open a public channel. She stood tall, composed, unshaken. Citizens of the Empire, she said, we are experiencing a challenge. It is being addressed. Remain calm. Trust does not come from perfection. It comes from response. The crisis did not end, but it changed shape. Instead of collapse, there was resistance. Instead of confusion, there was effort. Alien engineers began to ask Elias questions, not mocking ones, real ones. Why did you separate the systems instead of linking them again? Late into the cycle, when exhaustion showed on every face, the sabotage source was identified. A small coalition of fringe powers had hoped to destabilize the Empire and seize territory during the chaos. Their fleets were already moving. Kelthira received the report in silence. We can defend, a commander said, but our systems are not fully restored. What do you think? I learned from watching one grow up. People stepped out of their homes and shelters, unsure but hopeful. The Empire had not fallen, yet everyone could feel it. Something had changed. Inside the control center, exhaustion hung in the air. Engineers sat on the floor, leaning against consoles. Officers spoke in low voices. The crisis was paused, not ended. Elias Ward remained standing. He had not slept. His hands shook slightly now, but his eyes were clear. He studied the systems not as machines, but as habits. He was not fighting technology. He was guiding it away from its own mistakes. Kelthira noticed everything. You should rest, she said gently. Elias smiled. Soon. Empress, we have mapped the sabotage signal fully. It was layered, simple commands hidden inside normal traffic. Very clever. A locked door doesn't notice someone quietly opening a window. And comfort makes people believe tomorrow will look like today. That would be a mistake. Empress, that would leave us vulnerable. You want them to think we are still broken. That's the point, Kelthira replied. Elias smiled, proud but quiet. Over the next cycles, the Empire changed direction without announcing it. Public systems were restored slowly, imperfectly. Reports of delays and outages were allowed to spread. The image of instability was carefully maintained. Behind that image, something else grew. Small teams were formed, mixed teams. Engineers, analysts, pilots, and thinkers from many species. Elias trained them himself. He did not lecture, he asked questions. What do you do when the screen goes dark? I'm teaching you about storms. Their leaders were confused. The Empire was alive but not whole. It was moving but not predictable. This is not how they respond, one commander said. They should have repaired everything by now, another agreed. They are hiding something, a third warned, but they could not see what. Back on the capital, Kelthira stood with Elias on a high balcony overlooking the city. The lights below flickered unevenly by design. You're changing my empire, she said. He leaned on the railing. No, you are. Then she asked, did you ever want to rule, Elias? We will decentralize, she announced. Reduce dependence on unified systems, increase independent command. That night the enemy fleets finally moved. They advanced cautiously, testing defenses. They sent probes, signals, traps. What they found confused them. Some defenses responded, others didn't. Patterns were inconsistent. There was no central rhythm to predict. It's like fighting fog, one enemy officer said. Inside the capital's defense command, Kelthira watched reports flow in. Manual teams are holding, a commander said. They are making decisions faster than the automated systems ever did. No shared mind to trick. They tried again and again. Each time the Empire adapted, not perfectly, but effectively. Hours passed, then days. Finally, the enemy fleets pulled back. They had lost nothing, but gained no advantage. In warfare, that was failure. Across the Empire, relief spread. Cheers rose, not loud, but deep. Kelthira stood before the public channel again. We did not win, she said honestly, but we endured, and that matters more. They will want humans closer to power, she continued. He looked at her carefully. And what do you want? We stay until others can stand. But the quiet force that taught empires how to survive when perfection failed, the galaxy did not stay quiet for long. News of the failed destabilization spread fast, even though the empire did not announce everything. Other powers noticed patterns changing. Trade routes adjusted. Signals behaved differently. The Solistari Empire no longer moved like a single perfect machine. It moved like something alive. That made many leaders uncomfortable. Requests began arriving at the capital. Some were polite, some were demanding, some were afraid. They all wanted the same thing: answers. Kelthira reviewed the messages from her private chamber. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, but her mind was busy. Every request mentioned the same detail, though never directly. The human, they did not ask for Elia's ward by name. They asked about new doctrines, unusual recoveries, and unexpected resilience. But the meaning was clear. Human methods had been noticed. She closed the last message and exhaled slowly. Outside her chamber, Elia sat on a low bench reading from a thin paper book. It was old, worn at the edges, a rare thing in an empire of glowing screens. You knew this would happen, Kelthira said as she stepped out. Elias did not look up. Yes. Control it. Some looked curious, others angry. One spoke immediately. Your empire survived a targeted collapse that should have destroyed you. We want to know how. A counselor from her own empire leaned forward. Empress, with respect, transparency may weaken us. Because the old rules were fragile. She looked at Elias. He met her gaze and gave a small nod. They are not conquerors, she said. They are not rulers. Humanity is a memory of failure that learned how to survive it. That is the difference. Not in systems, in themselves. In a training chamber deep within the capital, Elias worked with a new group. Pilots, commanders, analysts, no projections, no simulations, just a simple exercise. What do you do, Elias asked, when all your data is wrong? Assume the source is gone. Later that cycle, a message arrived from the Fringe Coalition. Not hostile, not friendly, cautious. They requested dialogue. The council reacted with suspicion. It could be a trap. We misjudged you. Only to those who depend on certainty. He pushed too far, one medic said quietly. Elias opened his eyes briefly. Worth it. Kelthira stood before the council again, alone this time. We will formalize decentralized command, she announced, and we will share our methods. It is a responsibility. Because of you. The Empire was no longer the strongest machine in the galaxy. It was something more dangerous to those who feared uncertainty. It was learning how to stand without needing to be flawless. And at the center of that lesson lay a quiet truth the galaxy was only beginning to understand. Human power was never loud. It was patient. And once revealed, it could not be unseen. The capital world woke under a calm sky. There were no alarms, no flashing warnings, no urgent messages flooding the networks. For the first time since the crisis began, the Empire breathed easily. Kelthira stood alone on the highest balcony of the palace, looking out over the city. Lights moved below her like slow rivers. Ships entered and left orbit in quiet order. Nothing looked perfect, and that was why it worked. Behind her, the doors opened softly. Elias Ward stepped out, walking slowly but without help. His face looked older than before, but his eyes were clear. He paused, taking in the view. You should be resting, Kelthira said without turning. I am, he replied gently. This is rest for me. Others asked for partnership. A few asked carefully worded questions that were really fears. They all wanted to know the same thing. How did an empire survive without being perfect? Kelthira had delayed answering, not out of uncertainty, but out of respect. She wanted Ilia's present when she did. Later that cycle, the largest public broadcast in the Empire's history was prepared. Not just to citizens, but to every known major power. The council chambers were filled, but the focus was not on them. The focus was on the central platform. Kelthira stood there, calm and steady. Ilia stood a few steps behind her. The channel opened. Across the galaxy, leaders, thinkers, and observers watched. Kelthira began. "Not long ago, our empire nearly fell," she said. "Not because we were weak, but because we believed we could not fail. We were reminded," Kelthira said, "by someone we once believed had nothing left to teach us. He did not save us with force," she continued. "He did not command armies or threaten worlds. He reminded us how to think when the answers disappear. We will teach our citizens to decide, not just obey, to adapt, not just optimize." Afterward, the council erupted in debate. Fear, hope, anger, excitement. Kelthira listened, then raised her hand. "This decision is final," she said. "History will judge it." "You revealed it." But time did not wait. One morning, Kelthira received a message from the medical council. She already knew what it would say before she opened it. Human bodies did not last forever. She found Ilias in the garden where he often walked. He sat beneath a tree that had been grown from earth soil, imported long ago as a gift. "You knew," she said. "Yes," he replied. "You didn't tell me." Let them remember the lesson instead. The Ward principle. It was simple. Always assume something will fail. Always prepare people, not just systems. Always leave room for judgment. Years passed. Kelthira ruled wisely. Her empire grew not faster, but stronger. Harder to frighten, harder to break. The galaxy slowly followed. And somewhere, in stories told on distant worlds, people spoke of the human who stood beside a queen and changed everything without ever raising his voice. Not because he wanted power, but because humanity had learned long ago that the greatest strength was not control. It was the ability to stand when everything else fell away. And that truth, once revealed, could never be hidden again. The alien queen was shocked when her human father showed his hidden power. HFY Stories. Best HFY.